think how ironic that Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar and the rest of the ladies on The View spend their time calling Republicans.
In the world of high-stakes media drama, few stories have been as shocking as the one unfolding between Karoline Leavitt and The View. What started as a typical news cycle about a conservative lawsuit quickly transformed into something far more dangerous. Leavitt, with her razor-sharp focus and an $800 million defamation lawsuit, is not backing down. She's pushing harder, and it's sending shockwaves through the TV world.
Legally, then certainly he is open to deporting them. And that's what this administration is hard at work at doing. We receive...
You know, we're doing such a great job at the White House. Well, it's easy to do a good job when you are acting on common sense.
Let's rewind a bit. You remember when Leavitt first dropped that bombshell lawsuit, right? It shook the View panel, but no one took her seriously. Not at first. The hosts of The View dismissed it as just another stunt from a conservative looking to stir up headlines. They mocked it, they laughed, and in typical daytime fashion, they rolled their eyes at it all. But boy, were they wrong.
Young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this.
Behind the scenes, while the women of The View continued to laugh it off, ABC executives were quietly freaking out. The network's legal team wasn't laughing anymore. No longer was this some casual drama or a politically motivated stunt. They realized the lawsuit had real weight. Defamation claims, tight as a drum, receipts. Every quote, every shady remark, and every piece of evidence lined up perfectly.
The illegal surge of deadly drugs and of human beings that we have seen trafficked over the southern border and the northern border, hence the tariffs on Canada.
When the lawsuit first dropped, the on-air crew of The View acted as if they had the whole thing in the bag. Joy Behar, one of the more outspoken hosts, led the charge. With arms crossed and eyes rolling, she tossed her opinion out there. Conservatives always play the victim, she said. It was classic Joy, dismissing a serious legal matter as a nothing burger.
Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that again have been ripping us off. Tariffs are a tax cut for the American.
Whoopi Goldberg, ever the seasoned TV icon, barely flinched. A half-hearted sigh and a sarcastic comment about fake outrage was all she had to offer. The damage control wasn't even on their radar, and they went on with their usual scripted banter, brushing the lawsuit aside like it was nothing. Sunny Hostin, the self-proclaimed legal expert on the show, was no better. She quickly dismissed the case as something with no legs to stand on. Confident, dismissive, she was sure this was all just a bunch of noise.
So as economic fears grow and Americans worry about their financial future, there was a fundraiser.
She's probably been put in there because according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though, it's not her first job. It was her first press.
But this time, they were wrong. Behind those polished smiles and rehearsed laughs, the real story was brewing. Karoline Leavitt wasn't backing down, and her legal team was no joke. The facts they presented were not just surface-level noise, they were damning. Leavitt had the receipts, and when ABC's legal team took a deeper dive into the lawsuit, they realized it wasn't a typical political stunt. It was a real threat. The documents, emails, and direct quotes within the lawsuit were airtight. Leavitt wasn't just throwing around vague accusations. She had evidence, real evidence. And the defamation claims weren't looking good for The View.
In front of the White House yesterday. For the richest man in the world. And even Peter Doocy from Fox News chimed in about this infomercial for Tesla. Take a look.
Now the network was in panic mode. The legal team was scrambling. trying to figure out how to prevent this from becoming a public disaster. Insiders began whispering about the possibility of a settlement. Yes, you heard that right. ABC executives who once scoffed at the lawsuit were now discussing how to bury this mess without it getting any worse. The network had one major problem. They underestimated how hard Leavitt was pushing. The deeper ABC's lawyers dug into the lawsuit, the more they realized they were in deep. The legal claims weren't just hypothetical, they were backed by hard facts. And now, this wasn't just about damage control, it was about survival.
Even Peter Ducey from Fox News chimed in about this infomercial for Tesla. Take a look.
I know he'd give me a discount, but honestly, I don't want to ask for one. You know, I'm president, so I want to pay.
Remember when they thought it was just a frivolous headline grab? Yeah, not so much anymore. Leavitt's legal team came prepared. We're talking official documents, internal memos, sworn statements, and straight-up defamation claims that could shake the network to its core. If even one piece of it stood in court, it would be disastrous for The View. That's when ABC's legal team started moving like they had something to lose. They weren't playing around anymore. Internal emails and private meetings could be exposed. And it wouldn't stop there. If this thing went to trial, it wouldn't just be about the on-air drama. It could rip open ABC's darkest secrets, the kind of stuff the public was never supposed to see.
Racism and misogyny, they're just alive and well. I think that we don't want to think that about ourselves, our neighbors, our friends, but it's my lived experience tells me that it does still exist.
As the reality of the lawsuit began to set in, the tension backstage at The View hit a boiling point. Behind closed doors, the execs were already preparing for the worst-case scenario: settlements, legal exposure, and massive fallout. The panelists, Whoopi, Joy, and Sunny, kept playing it cool on air, cracking jokes and downplaying the whole thing. But off camera, it was chaos.
Democrats in the media are now unloading all their nasty attacks on rising Trump White House star and new press secretary.
There were emergency meetings, damage control strategies, and even whispers of settlement talks. The same hosts who had once dismissed Leavitt as a joke were now being briefed on how to handle the situation. And suddenly, they weren't as confident as they'd been on air. The shift was palpable. The real fear, the kind of fear that shows when the stakes are as high as $800 million, was settling in. Whoopi Goldberg, the queen of that panel, had lost her cool. She felt blindsided. The network she had trusted, the one she had worked for decades, was now thinking of settling with someone she considered irrelevant. Whoopi, a woman who had faced countless public controversies and weathered every storm, was seething. But this time, she wasn't sure she could fight it.
About the confusion that still exists across the country right now as it relates to the freeze or the pause as it's described.
So you're asking a hypothetical based on programs that you can't even identify. What I can tell you is that
since you guys haven't identified, let's do it together just for Americans at home.
The cracks in The View's empire were growing wider. Joy Behar, the usually sharp and vocal one, was visibly rattled. She stormed into her dressing room, throwing a fit like a hurricane, slamming her makeup bag across the counter. The betrayal was clear. She felt like the network was throwing her and the whole show under the bus. After all, they had helped build ABC's reputation and made millions for the network. Now, they were being left behind over a lawsuit they had initially laughed at. And it wasn't just Whoopi and Joy. Even Sunny Hostin, the usually composed legal expert, was shaken. As a former prosecutor, she knew a thing or two about legal battles. And this one? It wasn't looking good. The legal team had seen the evidence, and it was airtight. Internal messages, backstage conversations, and every little slip-up they had made. All of it could be dragged into the light.
About behavior from Democrat lawmakers, a lot of disruptions, and I just wanted to kind of go back to that.
And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place. Yesterday, the new White House press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, gave her very first press conference where she announced that there.
And so when the panic hit, the hosts started backpedaling. They flipped the script, trying to paint themselves as the real victims. Whoopi started speaking in a softer tone, pleading with the audience to understand. Joy Behar couldn't hide her discomfort, her voice tight and faltering. Sunny Hostin, once the confident legal expert, was now offering up a half-hearted olive branch, trying to get Karoline to settle outside of court. But the public wasn't having it. The internet had already made up its mind. The View's credibility was in shambles. People saw straight through the fake humility, the forced smiles, and the desperate attempts to salvage their reputation. Social media was buzzing with memes, viral videos, and tweets that mocked the hosts for their sudden change of heart. Whoopi Lied was trending, and the damage was done.
House. First of all, did you ever imagine that you would be press secretary to such a dynamic president in such a time as this, where things are changing at rapid pace, and you're the young...
While the hosts scrambled, Leavitt stayed silent. She didn't need to say a word. She was letting them twist in the wind, knowing that every awkward apology and desperate pivot from the hosts just made her case stronger. She had exposed them for what they truly were: arrogant, out of touch, and scared of being held accountable. Leavitt had flipped the game on The View, and she didn't even need to break a sweat. The hosts were doing all the talking, and the public was listening. The tables had turned, and the once untouchable network was now scrambling to save face.
And I relish the opportunity to bring the truth and the facts to the podium. And unfortunately, the mainstream media has been blinded by this bias, this anti-Trump bias. And it's actually quite sad, because rather than dealing with people who are truly interested in journalistic integrity and finding out the truths and the facts.
Now, we want to know what you think. Is this the final blow for The View? Is Karoline Leavitt really about to pull off the most shocking takedown in TV history? Or is this all just another publicity stunt gone wrong? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you think the $800 million lawsuit is about to tear The View apart. Subscribe for more updates on this insane drama, because this case isn't over yet. And trust us, it's about to get way more intense. Stay tuned, folks. The empire's crumbling, and Karoline Leavitt is sitting pretty.